Hi, welcome to Box on the Box, Rock and Celluloid, Botbrack for short. So I've got a first for you today. I'm reviewing a Netflix film, a straight to Netflix film. So back in the day, we all remember films going straight to video or straight to DVD. Now things go straight to Netflix or straight to Sky via Sky Cinema and so on. And these films tend to be of a wide quality. Sometimes you get Oscar bait like The Irishman or Roma. Other times you just get some like kind of really shit horror film. Sometimes it's quite hard to tell which films Netflix producing themselves or which films they've bought at a festival and then put the Netflix badge on. But this film, Extraction 2, is all funded and produced, financed, etc. by Netflix. So this is a kind of one of the tentpole films of Netflix. The original Extraction came out in 2020, right at the start of the pandemic, so it was one of those lockdown films that everyone watched. It was actually viewed by 99 million households, and I think those were complete views. So this is how this metric works, and I'll talk about that a bit afterwards. What I'm going to do is I'll do a spoiler-free review, and then we'll have a little mini break. I'll say I'm switching, and I'll go into it a bit more. So the original Extraction, like I said, I thought it was all right. I think at the time it was kind of like 5 out of 10, but maybe it's a 6. It was an action film. Chris Hemsworth, basically he's a guy who gets people, he rescues a kidnapped lad, he extracts them and gets them to safety. If it was made in the 1990s or 80s with Arnold Schwarzenegger, it would have been called The Extractor, and Arnie would have gone, "You have been extracted." But that's not how it is now, you know. So my sort of feeling that the sort of gimmick or the thing that sold Extraction was Chris Hemsworth's star power, relative star power. I don't consider him a movie star as such. You know, he's the star of Thor. It's a different thing. He's not Harrison Ford or Clint Eastwood. But it also used long one-take action, so there was a 12-minute take in it. Now, this one-take action stuff we have seen in things like The Raid, John Wick does it, and there's a big one-take fight scene in Atomic Blonde as well. So the way they do this is actually you use the power of digital really to put invisible cuts in, I think. You know, a lot of these things it would just be so hard to do in a Wunner. You might remember that amazing take in Children of Man while they're in a car. Yeah, that's a one shot take, and it's that kind of thing where, you know, actors kind of have to move around and it's like intense choreography. It must, you know, if something goes wrong in the take at the last minute, where you've got to shoot it all again. But like I said, there must be a way they can cut these a series of mini longer takes together, I think. So it's kind of gimmicky. You know, I'm not that keen on it. It's kind of got that first person shooter thing. But anyway, Extraction cost $69 million or $65 million. So this is Netflix, you know, they do this thing where they do pump a bit of money in. But this was a sensible proposition because that's a mid-budget. I find it insane when they spend $200 million on things like The Grey Man and Red Notice. Forgettable flicks that pay stars a lot. A bit later on I'll talk about the Netflix films I think are good. So anyway, my original Extraction take was, you know, 5, 6 out of 10. I've got to say, Extraction 2, I really enjoyed it, and I think it kind of legitimises Extraction 1 more because it's clear they're building something. So basically the plot with this one is Chris Hemsworth. He obviously survived the end of Extraction. He's actually really poorly at the start. And he gets hired again to extract a woman and her son and daughter from a prison. She's in the prison with her husband who's in there, who's a Georgian gang boss, and he's got a mental brother. And they're really bad apples. So I'm not going to kind of like the plot things because that would spoil. We'll talk about in the spoiler review. But essentially, the action is first rate in this. The one take thing now, it's kind of established that with the first film, so they really try and do more with it. The opening sequence is a 25-minute, I think, Wunner. That goes through several evolutions. This is once the plot's set up. I must say it actually gets into the plot mechanism fairly quick on this. And they really do some crazy stuff with it. And it's actually really fun to watch. You know, you're thrown right into the action. It's very well done. Then there's a kind of, you know, more kind of plot-based stuff Then there's another big action sequence, plot-based stuff, action climax. So it's using that as kind of structure as typical of things like James Bond films or Jason Bourne, where you've got basically what they used to call them in Bond films is bumps, basically. You know, you have expositional and more dialogue, plot-based moments to get to your next action scene. So in this film, I think the cast is very good. It actually got characters you care about. It builds on the characters, actually grows Chris Hemsworth's character. The actress who stars alongside me is Golshifteh Farahani. Please excuse my pronunciation. I think she was really good in it. She was in the first one. Idris Elba's in it. A few other people, but they actually do flesh out the characters. The guys playing the villains are good, and there's a good bit of kind of character fleshing there. So I was surprised by that. And through full props to the director. The director, Sam Hargrave, is a stunt coordinator. Extraction was his debut. He works with the Russo brothers, who do the Marvel films, Captain America, Winter Soldier, and so on. Avengers, and they also did The Grey Man. But I think with this, he shows a bit more knack with staging scenes and getting stuff out of the actors, and I was impressed with that. He showed with Extraction he could do action. Can you do character? Can you do plot, dialogue, emotion? Yes, he can. Really good, decent music, good cinematography. Obviously, big props to the cinematography and the crew on this. Very hard to shoot this stuff. So yeah, I was really impressed with Hemsworth in this. I've got to admit, I've never been on a downer on Chris Hemsworth. To me, it's just typical thing of the Marvel stars. He is he's big because he's Thor, but Thor's the star. Sometimes he ends up doing typically American accent or British accent, and the only film I saw him in that I really enjoyed and thought was really good in was Rush, the film about James Hunt and Niki Lauda. But he was upstaged by Daniel Brühl in that as Niki Lauda. But in this, he's great in the physical action scenes. We know that the guy's built like a brick shithouse, but he's able to show sort of vulnerability, which I think's really good. And he's good in the sort of more emotional elements. He doesn't give too much away, but he kind of he's stoic, but he reveals a little bit. I think he's hit on something here with this film. He's basically he's got something other than Thor that he does, and it's kind of his thing. And yeah, I think there'll be Extraction 3, and it'll go on from there. So I'm going to close this part of the review. I'm going to give this, creeps up to an 8 out of 10. I think if you're not signed into Netflix at the moment, if you want to pay for adverts, I think it's $4.99. If you want to do it, $6.99. But if there's a couple of you watching it, this is it's worth your money. Okay, so I'm going to go into kind of spoiler land now. So this 8-minute mark. So if you don't want things spoiling, I'll just talk a bit more about some aspects of it. Okay, so I'm going to start now. So basically the first scene, it starts in the prison. For those who watched it, it goes into the big train sort of sequence with helicopters. There's a car chase sequence and train sequence with helicopters. And it kind of reminded me of Skyfall. If you remember the opening of Skyfall, Sam Mendes said he used it like a Russian doll, and that's the chase sequence kind of opens out into different things. This was incredibly well done. The bit in the prison, which is where it's comparable to the raid, there's a great bit in the middle of that where it was in the midst of the action. He got blatted and he lost the Russian lady who was trying to protect, and it kind of went into that Scorsese thing where you got the kind of body brace on the camera and there's that disorientation thing. If you remember De Niro coming in the bar in Mean Streets, and I thought it was really good. It just kind of slowed down the action and got in the character's head, and then it exploded again. Some great death scenes, great villains being blatted. That's what I want to see. I want to see people getting absolutely blatted. I enjoyed the use of gym equipment, so it was really really good. It was mental when they were going through the train carriage, and yeah, there's a little bit of CGI, but it's mostly physical action. The CGI enhancements where there was it were okay. Hemsworth was excellent in his sequences. Also nice, believable with his female sidekick character, played by the lady I probably didn't pronounce right before. She's really good, and it shows her fighting men, but she's really getting the crap kicked out of her. It really costs her. All too often we see in films where there's a fight between females and men, a male, and the female comes without a scratch. Where you're going to take on a bloke, even if you've got top fighting skills, these guys in this have got top fighting skills. You know, you're gonna feel it. So I thought that was good. So then they had the Vienna sequence. I'm not sure that was shot in Vienna. I've been there and I didn't recognise the building, but that was really good with the skyscraper, the bits on the glass, the great bit. There was a bit of gym equipment death there. That was all really well done. Crazy shootout, of course. You know, these things are always generally unrealistic. You know, there's people getting shot at everywhere. But that was good. I suppose with the climax, I was a little disappointed. It kind of finished off in the church and I had a fight, but that's not uncommon with these kind of films. Sometimes they do play it low and have it all mano mano. So, you know, it could have finished larger, but then again, it worked pretty well, and maybe the third one will finish larger. So that was sort of my take on that, you know, and then Olga Kurylenko, you know, for the brief part she was in, it was good. You know, some of the flashback scenes are a bit cheesy. It's that kind of Gladiator thing where we're using little flashbacks and images from a character's mind to give them emotional growth. But this was a lot better than, you know, what I felt was that everyone involved wanted to make a better film. They just didn't want to like go, oh, let's do a shoot 'em up, you know, action with these long takes to kind of, right, let's get in there a bit more. And I think they really succeeded. So I've been pleasantly surprised by this, and I think the upshot is it makes you rethink Extraction. I'll probably go back and watch Extraction and feel more that I was like on a part of a journey with the character. So, you know, Extraction 3, you know, take the time. There's a good chance they could produce a nice little trilogy and beyond. So this is interesting for Hemsworth. You know, he's putting his lot with Netflix on this. And this is both what's good about Netflix, but it's the problem with Netflix. So Netflix is able to go, yeah, what do you want to do to, you know, some like a young director like this Sam Hargrave guy, or first time director, second time director. Yeah, let's get a mid-level star, Chris Hemsworth. You know, his films don't do box office outside of the 4 films. You know, Men in Black International flopped, and Heart of the Sea flopped. Rush didn't do that well. Black, God, I'm forgetting the name. Black, the Michael Mann film, that flopped, you know. But Hemsworth's able to kind of throw himself into this. You realise what a great James Bond he would have made. That's not possible now because of 4. You know, the billows and means with, you know, Hammer and that. The other thing I like with this, he got to use Australian accent and he established more of a Chris Hemsworth star persona instead of his Thor persona. For those who saw Thor Love and Thunder, I watched the first 45 minutes, it's utter bollocks. I might go back just to laugh at it. So Chris Hemsworth needs to get away from Marvel, and this is a good way to do it. But the problem is with the Netflix thing is it doesn't generate any box office. It's just a moment that happens within Netflix. So a lot of people will probably watch this in the next 2 weeks. You know, I think I mentioned before the original Extraction was about a $65-70 million budget. I think this is the same. I think Netflix are right to pitch their films at this kind of budget and not too much high. You know, they're crazy spending $200 million on things like The Grey Man, in my opinion, or Six Underground, you know, that awful Ryan Reynolds film. But what it means is, you know, if supposing they released Extraction when it came out originally, you know, they would have probably spent the same money again on the budget, or a bit less on advertising. Say they would have spent $120 million advertising, printing the film, sending it out there. You know, to break even, it would have needed to gross $250 million. Would a Chris Hemsworth action film do that? I suspect it would have grossed about 130, 150. And in which case, you know, your film, TV rights and so on, you know, you might break even. You're kind of in Gerard Butler land, really, you know, comparable to his Angel Has Fallen type thing. So it's a weird one, this thing with Netflix. This, you know, maybe a third Extraction could go get a cinema release. I don't know. Obviously, Netflix spent a lot of money on things like The Irishman, Six Underground, Red Notice I mentioned before. But some of these films aren't very good. I've had to pick Netflix films that I liked. I did quite like The Adam Project. That was good. Obviously, we'll say the 2 Extraction films. I did like Roma. I did like The Irishman. There was Apostle, is it? I forget the name now. The folk horror film that the director of The Raid did, which is pretty good. Bird Box. Bird Box was a big moment because that's when a kind of Netflix came big part of the discussion more. In a wider kind of cinematic discussion, but it's still that thing you will never have. It's very difficult for films that go straight to these mediums to be part of the zeitgeist. You know, zeitgeist in spirit at the moment. You know, that thing where we go to the pictures and everyone's talking about that film over the course of the month or the 2 months that it's out. It's just a different thing. So that's like my wider problem with streaming films. An example would be Coda, the film. I still haven't seen it. It won the Oscar. It went to Apple. You know, what's the crack? I can't see it. I can't see this Oscar-winning thing. But yeah, you know, that's sort of something to think about. You know, there was this film straight to stream Sky Cinema, Hotel Mumbai. I think it was called that. It was about the terrorist attack. That was really good. That was a cut above. But often these films are just either crap or kind of 6 out of 10s. It's like films that feel they don't matter much. The first Extraction kind of felt like that, but now that's kind of been legitimised more because I think this is good. So I think that's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, definitely it's worth checking out this film. Like I said, I think it's worth it just signing back into Netflix for it and seeing what else is out there. Remember, share and subscribe. I'll see you again soon, and thanks very much.